Hello, everyone. Welcome to the next episode of Data as the Fourth Pillar, the Board and CXO's briefing.
Today we have a very special guest. Our guest today in the podcast is Carl Piva. Carl Piva is based in Sweden and he's the CEO of the Swedish Internet Foundation. And he comes with a wide experience working in the tech industry for more than 3 decades. And he's also part of various boards. So it'll be great to hear some of Carl's perspective both on the industry, on AI, on data, which is the theme of our podcast.
So, without further ado, let's welcome Carl.
All right, welcome back again. Welcome to this great episode from Data as the Fourth Pillar, the board and CXO briefing. Today we have a very special guest, Carl, and we are really looking forward to the discussion and perspectives. But before that, Carl, would you like to briefly introduce yourself to our audience?
Yeah, thank you, Sid. So my name is Carl. I'm the chief executive of the Swedish Internet Foundation. Among many things, we run the Swedish top-level domain .se, but we also do a lot of research into how internet works in Sweden and how people use internet in various ways. And I've been in the tech industry my entire life, initially in the consulting system integration space, where I, by the way, interacted quite heavily with data, which is pretty much what you're focusing on in this excellent book that you have written, the two of you. And later in life, I turned into more, let's say, management positions in tech, and have been fortunate enough to be part of some great tech outfits over the years, American product companies, and lately now in Sweden doing this work.
So that's great, awesome, Carl. And I think your internet and .sc thing struck my mind because in this present day of AI hype, as many people call it, and people are not only calling AI boom, but maybe an AI bubble. And you have lived, and many are comparing with the internet boom and the bubble. How do you see the present AI times? What do you see, and with your vantage point of being in that internet boom and bubble, what similarities or differences that you see, Carl?
Yeah, that's a great question, Sujay. So there are similarities. I mean, when you had the internet era, you had lots of companies without a proper business model that sort of went out and created, let's say, beautiful ideas, but the market wasn't ready for it then. Eventually, many of those business models came to fruition. So what they did in the early stages of the IT, let's say, internet boom, it didn't work out, but they worked out in later stages, which is like always a question of timing when you run a business, I suppose. I think we can see a little bit of that with the AI evolution we are watching now, particularly when you watch some of the giants who may only have limited revenues. Let's say OpenAI, maybe 18, 19 billion US in revenues. And they have commitments of maybe 1.4 trillion US dollars in spend over the next decade or so. And clearly that need to change if we are going to avoid a bubble. So I think it's more perhaps the thing that's different from the internet era perhaps is that some of the players in the AI in the early AI initiatives are actually companies making a lot of money. So there is much more of a, I view it much more as a complement to existing business models for them, that they are evolving their own structures and turning this into a revenue source, as compared to the internet when that started, because we came much more from a void when that happened. So I think there is a slight difference there, but I still think there is a bubble effect, particularly when we see that every time there is a new version out of, say, Gemini coming out as of late, and suddenly you realize that even though the others were perhaps good before that, then suddenly there's a leapfrog, and you realize that you can quickly become obsolete in this field. It's almost like fast-moving consumer goods.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think bubble and boom goes together, and I totally agree with you. My personal feeling is that in this AI age, it's totally different. It's not just in the internet age. I think it was just a group of companies calling on the internet high, but in the AI, it is quite widespread. It's not just the technology or the model providers, but AI is being adopted in the manufacturing industry, in healthcare industry, in financial services. They're already driving revenue. So these are revenue enhancers for them. So I think we might call it B and B, boom and bubble together.
So perhaps we can agree on that some of it is likely going to collapse, while other aspects are already a part of an established model. But what strikes me to be the really exciting part are the companies who manage to take machine learning and AI capabilities and really fuel their entire business model based on that and based on feedback loops, etc. Turning, let's say, generic AI into something unique for them and their business. And it seems to me that the starting point are usually some, new outfits who have a really, really cool idea and they can make it happen overnight. Uh, but maybe the ones who are going to be most successful in the end are the ones who are able to do this, let's say, switch the engine exercise in bigger companies and turn their scale to an advantage.
Right. I mean, very interesting. And I want to double click on what you just said, Carl, because you're absolutely right. I think we are getting through that phase where AI boom and hype is kind of settling down into also the ROI, right? Because a lot of boards and C-suite has invested now in AI, especially since the Gen AI boom the last couple of years. But now they're also asking for what's the return, on it. And on that, I want to get a bit of your perspective because you have a very important role you are playing today with many boards. If I know properly, you are also working with many green and sustainable enterprises. So there's also this side of the coin that AI needs to be used properly also from a green and a sustainable perspective. Otherwise, especially if with agentic AI, you could have situations where you end up consuming so much compute and energy, which is equal to many folds from a normal electricity and normal energy consumption. So what's your take on it, from both vantages, A, from a green and a sustainability perspective, but also B, from boards and CEO perspective and the ROI part of it?
So I think my perspective might be a bit controversial, but this is my perspective. So for one, and this is not the controversial part, digital and also supported by AI, those are important requirements in order to succeed with a green transition. People like the World Economic Forum have calculated that roughly 20%, maybe 25% of the green transition needs to be supported or driven by digital and AI. So it's a necessary requirement to drive green transition with a digital technology. That's why it's called twin transition. The twin transition is when digital drives the green transition. So it's a necessary part. The You could look purely on energy consumption. I mean, data centers, they are roughly 1.5 to 2.5% of global energy supply, or we are putting that into data centers today. Maybe that number will double, perhaps, when AI is being fully deployed. However, having that said, modern data centers today, yeah, they consume electricity, but on the back end of them, you use that electricity to do central heating or create energy. You have a little bit of a loss that goes and disappears, but it's not in a modern data center. That's likely under 10% of what you put in. So in that sense, we are actually producing energy that is being used in a data center or an AI data center that is then being used to heat our cities or create electricity at the back end. So in that way, this is a controversial part, I suppose. In that sense, it's actually not such a big problem.
Very interesting point. I didn't think of it that way. Probably also because I'm not, physically sitting and seeing how data centers operate. But it almost reminds me a little bit, and correct me if I'm wrong. It's a bit like, the traditional industry where a lot of byproducts were being created, and over time these byproducts also yielded a lot of value. And I guess now we are seeing the same with the data center, where a lot of the byproducts from usage can be also used either
Exactly.
directly
Yeah.
or indirectly
Yeah.
for value.
Precisely. So what is needed is to think about it as almost in a circular sense. It's a circular economy, but it's also circular in terms of environment. And if you do it, you get a pretty good end result, at least from that perspective. And then the question comes: is the technology that is going to run in these data centers, is that sustainable? And then that's, to me, is a much bigger question mark. I mean, the speed of innovation is so high, and I know that lots of people, they count on maybe a 5-year lifespan for this equipment, but it seems to me that in reality it's shorter. I mean, you can go and buy a like a personal laptop from NVIDIA Spark that can do 1 million billion transactions a second, which is, it's almost science fiction if you compare that to 20 years ago. So, and we can only guess that in 3 years, that's not going to be impressive, right? So that means the technology throughput in these data centers, that might be a bigger problem. I mean, the whole supply chain that goes into manufacturing them and then reclaiming them again.
I think that's a good segue. I think very interesting, Carl. And say from your point of views of the byproduct and the circular thing, and Carl, your initial talk about the importance of data and reflecting on our book. And that's what might be happening in businesses with regards to data as well, right? All the, like if you take your data center as a business process, all the business process is churning out data. And that data needs to be fed back to the business strategically to generate value to the business. So you can even think this circular view about data as well.
Yeah.
I would say maybe as a difference to the electricity where there may be a 10% loss, but here businesses might need to think, how can I 10x my data? Then the data that I'm collecting and generating from my business, how I can create 10 times of value leveraging AI as a tool, right? So
Yeah.
that's how you convert
And
that.
yeah, and that sort of takes us a little bit into, let's say, how do we use this marvelous new technology, this opportunity to innovate or re-innovate ourselves. And and for me, you sort of have to, if you just start by using AI in a company, you sort of end up with personal efficiency gains. People can use ChatGPT to work smarter, or use various tools, let's call them, to be slightly more effective. You doing precisely the same job that they did yesterday. So I would argue that is the most normal result that we get as when we try to implement AI in our companies, and we don't have a better plan than that. But then you can actually compare it to people who do it differently, who are more successful, who try to view AI as the the lever that will change their business model entirely. So how could you perhaps re-innovate the core of your offering so that it leverages machine learning and AI? And then suddenly you could find yourself in a position of, as you pointed out, Sujay, like 10 times better outputs of whatever kind you're talking about, or it could be 30% lower costs in one part of the business. So the trick, I think, is to either just accept that we don't have any real levers to implement AI in our company, but maybe our subcontractors or somebody else does, and that will benefit us down the line. Or you could go in and quite methodically walk through your lines of business, what you're doing, and figure out what is the one metric I want to change here that will make a significant impact on my company. It could be quality, it could be bottom line, whatever is important to you, and then make sure to surgically attack that specific challenge and start there. So do one thing right instead of just lots of things poorly.
I want to double click on this, Carl, because this is a very important perspective. We've heard this from from other boards and CEO members as well. Some call it kind of reimagining the whole business model itself based on the opportunity with AI. I wanted to get a couple of examples from you, just so how you are looking at it. For example, from a board or a CEO perspective, how should they be thinking? Because the examples, what I got so far from you, still more talks it from a business domains or a business process perspective. But how should a CEO or a board be thinking of this as an opportunity, either to increase
Yeah,
enterprise
that's a great
value
question.
or
So
yeah.
yeah. I had the privilege of meeting up with 70 board members 2 weeks ago, and we had a talk about AI together. And one of the questions I posed to the group was, how many of you are using AI in any shape or form today? And almost everybody put their hand up. And then I asked, how many of you are governing the innovation process and risk from a board perspective in the companies where you are on the boards? And then you didn't see as many hands in there. Quite the opposite. So I would argue, just based on that little example, most board members understand this is a coming an important question, but there is a lack of, let's say, tools and models on how to approach it from a board perspective. Board shouldn't go and recruit like an AI person, because if boards were going to do that, you could say the same thing for all new things that come along. It could be, oh, you need a GDPR person, you need somebody who understands some other aspect of the business. So what you really need are frameworks that can capture the real board challenge and put your finger on the real topics that boards really need to master. And they probably, in most cases, they go down to various governance aspects around the innovation and operation on one hand, and risk on the other. And within my own company, within our own company, I think we are sort of at the point where we've tried lots of different approaches within lots of different parts of the business, mostly as a sort of experimentation. And we are at the brink where lots of companies stop, which is right after experimentation, and not really being able to sort of jump over the chasm to some serious implementations. But we have identified one area where we think this is going to make a big difference if we can get it to work. It's still a little bit under the wraps, but it's one of those sort of fundamental changes. So if you actually put it in there, then it's actually going to make a significant improvement in terms of quality for us. So that's going to be the first serious project that we are probably going to embark on next year when it comes to start seeing if we can make that happen. But it goes down to this notion of select one thing where you can make a proper difference, and then that's the place where you're going to focus your efforts that relate to AI, perhaps, and then start learning, creating those feedback loops that makes it possible to keep fine-tuning the model that you have, so it becomes unique to you.
Yes, exactly. And that's why you need to drive your unique differences, right, Carl? And so curious, as you have been talking to these boards and you yourself driving, what is the role of the data that you see? Is it becoming a power engine for you, or is it becoming an inhibitor that is slowing down or restricting or challenging you to move over from experimentation to real production or industrialization, if I may say?
Yeah, so maybe we can make another analogy with the internet revolution when that happened. So one of the things that we are seeing now that was true with internet revolution was it was all very optimistic for a while. You could achieve everything, and even after you crossed the chasm and it became a proper industry and it actually grew rapidly all around the world. Then even then you looked at the bright sides of this area rather than the downside. Now when internet is a more mature thing, well, we suddenly put a lot more attention on the problem areas, the challenges. I mean, take cybercrime as an example. If you put all the money together that people steal over the internet, and you compare it to a gross domestic product, it would actually be the third largest country in the world after the US and China, growing at a whopping speed of more than 10% a year. So that's sort of the ugly other side of the internet, if you like, one of them. So of course we're spending more time on that as internet matures. It seems to me that AI is it's still very early stage, despite it's being around since the 50s, but it hasn't been around properly since maximum 3 years ago, right? In the minds of most of us. And I can see that we are still in this very early phase where everything is possible. There are no real downsides, and you're just starting to see some of them now, like AI poisoning, or for instance, artifacts on the internet that are created entirely of AI, or bots that operate independently, and all those things. So I think people are getting a little bit. They're starting to realize that with great power comes great responsibility. So you sort of need to rein this power in one way or the other, or for that matter, be cognizant about things like intellectual property rights. So when you start your AI journey, then you really don't want to end up infringing on somebody else's intellectual property. You don't want to treat your data the wrong way so that it becomes something that ends up in the public domain. So there are lots and lots and lots of those things where I feel both boards and management teams need let's say, advice and sound frameworks to be able to navigate these. And that's where I see that, for instance, for instance, your book come in handy, because it provides a framework for a structured approach to AI. In your case, you highlight the importance of data in this setting, which is entirely true. And I think for me, it's both our internal data that we need to understand: what's open, what's not, is it structured, is it not, what's crap, what's good. How do we make sure that we are optimally set up in order to get the most value out of AI? But also the external data that you need. What can you trust? What is legal? What is not? And you really have to think twice or three times in order before this is you end up in the right place.
Yeah, very interesting points, Carl. And just to add a bit of flavor on this, there is also data and its effects created from AI. For instance, a lot of enterprises are creating chatbots, either for internal employees or for external business partners, or even a customer service chatbots, right? But this also creates more data, because you as a customer or anyone interacting with the chatbot is entering a lot of questions and prompts and all of this, and all this is creating data which is potentially sensitive. If used in the wrong hands, can create the same effect what you mentioned with the internet, and its consequences there. So that is also, I think, what we are trying to say in the book, and in general, that you're also needing to reimagine data as a result of AI, both from a defensive perspective, but from an offensive perspective. The same example I give, the chatbot could also give a lot more information about the demand. So for example, if similar like how Amazon or e-commerce work, right? You look at trends or demands, and that created completely new product categories. Similarly, if you look at maybe questions coming up in the chatbots, that could give a lot of more information. For example, in an internal chatbot, a lot of employees might be asking about, I don't know, travel policies or leave
Yeah,
policies.
exactly. And then you realize, oh, this is not covered, or this is misunderstood,
Yes,
or
exactly.
everybody hates this part of what we are offering to our, whatever it is. You can draw some interesting insights based on that, for sure, Sid.
Yeah. So that is what we mean. That could be new business models created purely from these AI interactions as well, right?
Could be. Uh, Although the second you get a chance to have feedback loops, maybe from your customers, that improve your basic offering, or one way or the other, then I think then you find yourself in the right setting. Uh, Creating these feedback loops in an AI approach, to me, is one of the vital parts. And if you're not able to do that, then you are not necessarily evolving your AI model. Then it becomes like another static system in house. But the second you get this evolution, this ability to learn and improve, then you are taking, tiny little step perhaps towards the journey of becoming slightly better than your competitor in the market, or whatever you're doing.
Yeah, connected to that, that's how you can build your 10x. So, Carl, what I feel AI is doing, like you said, not only productivity, it's actually increasing the speed of business execution multiple fold. And when you increase speed, like driving on the autobahn with a, like say, 250 kilometers per hour or 300 kilometers per hour, the risk of errors also might increase, and you have to be very sharply focused on your business. And that's the risk AI is bringing in, like what Sid said, with lot of data being coming in, new data being generated. If you're not sharply focused, if you're not moving with that speed, your competition is relatively moving faster, so you are actually then relatively moving slower.
Yeah. And on just to sort of piggyback on what I just realized, I missed mentioning something Sid was talking about regarding chatbots, and I don't think we have to be so worried about getting wrong answers from chatbots. That's not the problem. What we should be instead thinking about is, let's compare it to had it been, let's say, a call center. A call center also makes errors and misjudgments, and doesn't have the right data all the time. So benchmarking is probably more interesting. Being able to benchmark one, let's say, channel versus another, and if you come to the conclusion that yes, AI chatbots, they make mistakes, but they're still better perhaps than some alternative, whatever it is, then it's really a better solution and choice, regardless. So, because I sort of find when you look at examples online relating to AI systems that don't work, it's almost as if you just want one single example of it not working, then that's sort of discrediting the whole thing, which is not true. I mean, unless of course it's something that's inside, let's say, a plane or a car or something more, if it's part of like that type of use case. But for most use cases, in that sort of setting that we're talking about now, then speed and quality, as long as you beat those parameters, then you are, compared to the other options that you have, then it's still a perfectly viable choice.
And I think, we talk about biasness of AI. Maybe as humans, we are becoming biased. We ignore when a human being makes an error, we say to err is human. That human beings can make mistakes, but when an AI is making mistake, we are pointing at one mistake and say this is where it is.
Yes.
And Carl, another point you brought up, I think you talked about speed and you talked about quality, and then we have been talking about the compliance aspect as well. So you're actually pointing to one of the frameworks in our book, which we call the QCS framework, quality, compliance, and speed, to actually measure data intensity. What is the quality requirement that is Q? What is the speed requirement? And with AI and AI agents, speed is becoming very important. And as I was talking earlier, when the speed increases, that it is more challenging to maintain the quality and the compliance, right? If you slow down, if you're driving slowly, you can look around, you are more safe, but when you have to move fast, the chances of error becomes more highlighted, and even compliance angle. Your thoughts on that? How do you think about this QCS framework?
Yeah, I think my perspective is it would vary quite substantially from whether you're running, say, you're a med tech company that creates a solution for let's say, open heart surgery. Then it can't go wrong. It needs to work. Quality is paramount. If you are making if you're making a if you're making some other solution, then you will have a different perspective, and you will think differently about the challenges you need to meet. Some cases, financial is it can't cost anything. It needs to be super inexpensive. Otherwise, the whole business case dies. So I guess you have to start it at the vantage point where you're at, and then really work yourself all the way from that perspective, all the way into the core of the problem. And in some cases, AI is simply not your answer, for sure. I mean, it's not something that's going to be applied everywhere. I mean, it doesn't solve all problems. We don't want AI to solve, let's say, many problems to do with accounting. No, we want expert systems that does that. so
Maybe
we have to choose our
building a house.
category.
Yeah, AI can't
Yeah,
build the
yeah,
house for
yeah.
me, right? So, but I think the key point, Carl, I feel is to have that realization and understanding. Okay, what is the quality requirement here? What is the speed requirement? What is the compliance? Otherwise, you are walking blindfolded or unaware, and then you are risking your
Yes,
business altogether, right? If you're unaware of that.
yes.
And in the data world as well, we see this a lot, Carl, where a lot of enterprises, small or big, build a lot of data, what we call supply. So they end up building a lot of systems or technologies, or even have a huge people setup to support it. And then they are looking at what can be the demand, right? It's almost like you've opened a shop and then you try to find out who's your customer persona, versus doing it also in ideally before, but at least in parallel to building the supply.
Precisely. So at the core of it, we can't just think about this as throwing an arrow, like hoping that something sticks somewhere on a. We need to be quite selective, determined, focused. It's like proper business development. So we have this new capability. How can we apply it? Or where should we be applying it, and what effect or outcome are we expecting from that? Can we prove that? Do we have the data to make it happen? Do we have the staff to make it happen? I mean, it's still a limited resource. AI specialists are high in demand today. What can we reasonably achieve with the people we have who work the problem, if we are not like limitless in resource? So I would be very deliberate about picking these challenges and view it as any other business problem, and then figure out if what's the best solution. And for cases where AI is, I would argue it's much better to focus on a very select few, but do it properly, and really make sure that this thing can learn, fine-tune, evolve over time. So it becomes something that improves your business over time, and lives with your business, and evolves the business as part of it. Because that's a real promise of these systems. Yeah.
Yeah. I would say overall goal should be how do you achieve success by design, not by hope or chance, right? And the challenge here is that you just cannot bring in, as you're connecting to only not just an incremental productivity improvement. You have to see how you can bringing in a multiplier effect in your business, because that's where your competitors will be doing. So, Carl, if you take another pivot and focusing on the data, like we touched, when you're interacting with these boards and the CEOs, how do you see their understanding and realization of the importance of data, or bulk of the discussion is very much so much AI focused that at that level you are not seeing that interest to go one level deeper to actually discuss and find out what are these capabilities that we need, what are data capabilities, people capabilities, process capabilities? Are you seeing that holistic angle to the discussion, or just very much front loaded with AI, just with AI and it ends with AI?
Well, one of the things you see with AI is you don't, if you do it the lightweight approach, you want to use a tool, for instance, that does something very, very efficiently or smartly, then you might not even involve your tech departments. You sort of go, you might do it on your own. You use your credit card and you expense it back. And it could be good, it could be bad, but it probably won't have a significant, everlasting impact on the way the business is run. But every time you need to do something serious with your business, you really want to put it at the heart and center of your business model, then you can't do that without your tech teams. So it immediately becomes a problem or a challenge for IT. And when it becomes a challenge for IT, then sometimes it's only viewed as an IT issue. And that's probably not the place where we want this to go entirely. We need to have the IT stakeholders very closely involved. But at the end of the day, this is something that can make or break your business if it's not treated as a business problem as well. So that sort of, I suppose, opens up the question, how should this be managed within organizations? Should it only be managed within a tech department, or should it be managed some other way? And right now, I mean, the jury is probably a little bit out on that. On the other hand, you see more and more CIOs, for instance, who are recruited from the business world instead of from the IT world, because you realize you need to be bridging business with IT. So one way of doing that is obviously to get the business guy to run an IT department. So because that person would come in with a different mindset. But that mindset surely needs to evolve. Too many things in our companies in general are being viewed simply as some sort of an IT resource that costs you money and that you need to maintain over time, while this is a business capability that needs to be nurtured over time and steered towards a business target.
Very well said, Carl. I wanted to add a perspective and also get your feedback on or more thoughts on what I'm about to say. You're right, very much. If you look at just AI from scratching the surface, it might impact, as you said before, at a very small scale, and only move the needle a little bit in terms of the context of the whole enterprise. If you think of the next level from an impact and a maturity perspective, as you said, then you need to go into embedding this as a program, ideally both involving business and IT. But the third layer I want to add is, what I see at least is when enterprises go even next level, where I build AI at multiple different business domains and departments, then a common problem we have seen these enterprises have is siloed data. So the data of department, say marketing, is very different to the data of department customer service, is very different
Yes.
to the data of product.
Yes.
And then they realize, oh, if I really now need to get to that next level of maturity, I need also a holistic data foundation with connected data, semantics, all of this. And then only these language models, which are by themselves commodity, will be even able to understand my end-to-end enterprise knowledge. What is your thought on this perspective?
Yeah. I mean, our companies are incredibly disconnected when you start looking at it. And I mean, if you go into any big company, you will find systems that define customer at one end of the company being one thing, and the other it's something completely different. So having ontologies that actually span the entire business, or the ability to translate what data means in one end to something that exists somewhere else, that is a crucial element of getting this right. I think understanding your data and what data that you have that might be valuable, and just being able to put it sort of on the shelf, or put it on the table and say, well, listen, this is what we have. This is our foundational data that we can use for anything that improves our business within these given constraints, whatever constraints you put up. That puts you in a position to do something with AI. If you don't do it, you will also find data that's being locked away somewhere by somebody's fiefdom. No, this data is mine. Don't come and touch my data. It's so special and important. We don't want that either. So I think the notion of having a data officer that you also propose in the book is I mean, you need, in some organizations, you definitely need them anyway. but this is just going to even push that requirement further. You really do need them if you're doing this seriously. And you need it not just for your own data in your own company, you need it to be able to pinpoint data from partners or within your ecosystem. Uh, uh, you Because companies are all more and more working in ecosystems. We are using others more and more in order to create what it is that we are doing, and the ones who might be able to actually utilize the ecosystem the best might be the future winners, because they get most value out of the ecosystem that they are in, and you can't do that without data.
True, true. And also, Carl, what AI also poses a challenge, as you talked about ontology, it's not about whatever the data is captured already, but there's a lot of ontology or knowledge sitting in the human's mind, right? And if you have to bring in more AI into the business process, you have to capture that understanding of the individuals that are working in these processes and gain that knowledge from this kind of a knowledge transfer from the humans to the AI, right? And then
Yeah, yeah,
it also brings in a what I can say challenge or a not about having clarity. Why should I do it? That incentive model is not clear for the human being. So if Carl, someone asks you, okay, you are the CEO, Carl, okay, put down all your knowledge out, everything that you know, then you will not like to do
yeah.
that.
Probably not, unless they send me to some really nice island with a little umbrella drink, which they won't. So I agree with you. There needs to be a different offer for this to work out. No, my guess is we are all going to be. So if we are successfully going to navigate in this new business world, we are not going to do it without using AI or thinking that I don't need this, I can do it anyway. There will be some roles that will disappear from the job market for sure, but they are not that many. I mean, I think the calculations I've seen, they are between 5 and 10%. And in addition, we're going to have a host of jobs that will be impacted by AI. So being assisted by AI one way or the other, or benefiting from understanding how it can be used, we are all going to need to embrace that and integrate that into our being, so we can actually use the power of AI. And then, of course, there are jobs going to be created by AI that didn't exist yesterday. So those jobs that are actually lost for real, they will reappear most likely in other fields. Maybe not even not to do with AI technology, perhaps, but by use cases, like downstream use cases, which we don't know about today. But they will all be created as a part of the process. So, like many things when it comes to technology development, there needs to be a healthy element of trust the process, because if not, then we're just going to stop, ask too many questions, and never get to the value creation side of things. So there is a part of this will be a journey, and while we're on that journey, we need to look hard at some of the things we can change as we are on that trajectory. Some of them are, I mean, easy things, like, wow, this business problem here is ripe for a machine learning, deep learning type solution. Let's attack it. Let's make it like wildly better, and let's learn something while doing it, right? And other problems will be, still too challenging. Maybe we can approach them in a few years or down the line.
Mm. But do you see the boards, Carl, and the CEOs that you interact with, are they concerned with the risk of disruption? Because what AI does, it lowers the entry barrier for new entrants to come in. There are talk about even a single person unicorn. So how do you see boards and CEOs thinking about that risk of disruption? Because some may have been existing in business for long.
Yes, and the way I've been thinking about it myself is that small startups, they are going to embrace this like nothing else. They're going to see this is a gigantic opportunity for me to turn the table on some established player, come up with a different, with an offering that has a different velocity, a different price point, whatever it might be. So that's not the group that's in jeopardy in my mind. I don't think necessarily that the largest companies are perhaps at the highest risk either. They have, at least most of them have realize that this is a game changer, and they put investment into creating their own strategies and their own approaches to meeting this challenge. I think the most volatile group are let's say the medium-sized enterprise, perhaps that's perhaps existed 50 years. There are lots of them around the world. They don't have strong boards necessarily, or they have boards that are good maybe at the industry in which they exist. They don't have necessarily an AI innovation culture. They certainly don't. They might have like whatever industry culture that they have. It could be a slow-moving one, or it could be fast-moving in a technical field that we don't know anything about. But they surely don't have this component of innovation. So when I'm thinking about the people who might, or companies that might be in the real risk zone here, I would put it in the medium-sized company group the most. And for those boards, they need to wake up and smell the coffee. And the way the coffee smells, it's innovation on one hand and it's risk on the other. You need to have those two things. You need to play with those two dimensions at once.
Yeah, and in the AI, yeah, sorry, Sid, just to add, in the world of AI, Carl, I see two ROIs: risk of inaction and risk of incorrect action. So with AI, you face those two ROIs as the risk of inaction and risk of incorrect actions.
Yes, that's a good one. I'm thinking about it as somebody who wants to score a goal, right? If you don't touch the ball, you're never going to hit the goal, right? You have to try to hit the ball, and you might not you might not win every time, but you have a higher percentage chance of succeeding if you hit the ball. So you will need to hit it. You don't, and my suggestion is to hit it pretty hard when you hit it. But with a small team, focused effort, determined effort, a singular KPI that is really, really important to change, a business problem that is well understood, data that is well understood, people who are clever and smart, with right competency level, and somebody who's accountable for it.
Right. And just to double click also, just to finish on the perspectives, I was really enjoying what you said with regards to small, medium, and large enterprises, and the ones perhaps in the medium being a bit of risk. But also wanted to get your perspective on public sector, right? I mean, you in a way also, the internet.se is in a way also helping society and community, right? And there's also here a huge perspective. One is, a lot of we've seen this trait also with cloud, for example. A lot of public sector has been very cautious being adopting to the cloud, and I see initial signs also, some public sectors being very adaptive to AI, but some being very cautious because of the obvious risks. And again, coming back to the football analogy of whether you want to play or not, how do you see that or what would be your advice for public sector and governments even, or public sector companies?
Yeah, no. Google commissioned a study a year and a half ago by the Implement Group, and what they found out based on, I think, was it maybe Goldman Sachs data set in the background that had the entire demography of Sweden in its data set. What they found was that public sector in Sweden can gain roughly 80% of the benefit from AI implementation. So public sector is, in any way you view it, a prime a candidate for where you could implement AI responsibly. I visited a doctor yesterday with my kid, and the first thing the doctor asked me was, "Is it okay if I use this AI puck to capture our conversations, so that it can automatically transcribe this into notes based on the meeting?" I said, "Of course, that's fine." So that's like one small little productivity example in the public sector where you can actually get some value out of AI almost without applying yourself too hard. But then there are massive other benefits. So my hope is, what I would love to see is the public sector embracing AI to root out jobs that don't have to, where humans are not necessary, so that we can instead hire people to say, take a walk with an elderly person, or somebody who can uh, in a hospital do some work that shortens the time people who need cancer treatment, or somebody can put another person in a school, to teach our kids how to do math or whatever it is, so that we can distribute the effort away from things that really doesn't really add any productivity or gains, into areas where it would make total sense to invest much more money than we are doing today. So that's my vision for the public sector.
I would say it is critically important as well for the human society, because public sector plays an important role. And if private sector is growing and public sector kind of falls behind dramatically, I think that's not good for us, right? So that's a critical one. Good point. So we come to a signature question that we ask our guest, Carl. Uh, if you have to personify data, Carl, who could that be? It could be a real person in your life or even a fictional character. So just to bring some humanification of data.
Yeah, I would actually. You asked me the question just before we went on, and I thought about it for a second, and I realized it would probably be my dad. He was a very wise man when he lived. He sort of knew everything, uh, and what he didn't know, he could deduce from the knowledge that he had. So I thought that might be my answer too. And so when you ask a question, I sort of immediately came to think about him, because he was in a good day, he was a brilliant man.
No, I think those answers are the best one which comes immediately for you. And I think that talks to the importance that you place to data, right? Thinking about your dad is the highest attribution one could give, in my view. Right?
Yeah, it's a great
Yeah,
analogy
it
because
is.
I was also thinking, in from a maturity perspective, at least for me in my early days, I would more look at my dad and do the opposite thing. So that could be a maturity model from a data perspective as well. Maybe businesses looking at it and kind of doing the opposite thing. But as you grow older
Yeah,
and
I
perhaps
would
wiser,
I would likely have answered differently 30 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. And how we look at data or our dad changes, as Sid was saying, as we ourselves evolve, right? And many times we figure out the insight that it carries. Okay, so wonderful discussion, Carl. Any final thoughts you would like to share, or any highlights that you captured after reading the book, Carl?
No, I think you put an emphasis on data, to put it on as a high up in the organization, along with people and with process and with other things of that nature, and that to me is correct. And the other thing I would just sort of reiterate is, choose one problem that's really center to your business model. Attack it with a singular KPI in mind. Do it with the right small little team, and put somebody accountable for the success of it. Do those things, and you're going to see some great results. And then once you have a success or two, then you can take a next step, and be bolder as you move on.
awesome, amazing discussion, Carl. Thank you again for your time. I think in this world we live in, with AI and productivity and the number of things we could do, I think the most important thing we can give each other is time. So we really appreciate your time and your perspectives on this podcast. So
Well,
thank you
for
so
me too,
much.
it's been a wonderful conversation, Sid, and thanks, Sujay, for inviting me as well.
Our
Thank you.
pleasure, our pleasure. We as human beings are now working together with AI and need to give time to AI discussions to maximize the leverage, right?
Maybe I'm an AI avatar. Who knows?
Yeah,
Nobody can be
exactly.
certain anymore.
Exactly. So very cool. Thank you for your time. Thanks, Carl, and wish you a
Thank you.
nice time ahead. Take care.
Take care, guys.
Welcome back. So that was an intriguing and interesting discussion with Carl Piva, right, Sid?
Absolutely.
So great. So let us summarize our key takeaways, Sid. And to kick it off, the first one for me is this AI boom and bubble scenario that we all see. Right? There's a lot of hype have been about AI and all the circular investing happening in the technology players in the AI domain that has given this concern of a possible bubble. that might burst anytime. However, on the other side, we see AI being deployed in multiple key user scenarios from healthcare to financial services to manufacturing, and companies are significantly benefiting from that. And also, employees and individuals are improving their productivity multiple fold, right, Sid?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's all depending both as individuals and organizations, whether it becomes a boon or a bubble. My key takeaway, one of them from Carl, and there were many of them from this great discussion, was the whole sustainability part we got into, where we spoke with Carl about whether AI, and especially generative AI, with the huge amounts of compute and the context that it holds, become also a kind of burden to sustainability. But he brought a very interesting point, which was a good learning for me as well, about data centers and how they behave, and potentially using the byproducts of the data center to actually even bring a net zero or even a positive improvement towards sustainability and energy transition. That was a great learning for me, just like how traditional factories can also use byproducts to generate value. His great point about how we could leverage data centers, which of course consume a lot of compute but can also be used to create a lot of energy.
Yeah, that's critical. I think data centers play a key role in not only providing the computing capacity for AI, but also for the data that is critical for the success with AI. And leaning on to that, Sid, the my second key takeaway is how AI is creating disruption, and the most impacted segment we discussed with Carl is this middle-sized companies who has been doing business for many years, and having they face the pressure of the business execution and may not be so technology inclined to quickly jump on the AI train, do all the investment that is needed in the AI data foundation. So they face the significant risk of getting disrupted by new players, new entrants who come quickly, faster because the entry barriers has been lowered due to AI, and then the bigger players might enter these segments, right, and take their business away from them. So this middle size companies might be sandwiched in between, and they face the significant risk of extinction if they are not swift enough to start leveraging AI in their business.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a very good call out from Carl as well. And it's, I think, a key attention point for any board or C suite listener listening also to this podcast, that they really need to make sure that their enterprise, their medium sized enterprise, is really taking both data and AI seriously. And they make sure that they are taking the right steps. And on that note, Sujay, I think one of the key right steps that Carl alluded to is, especially in every board and C suite, AI is a huge topic, especially in the last few years. But how you go about implementing it, and Carl suggested a very nice approach, which I kind of think of it like a sniper approach, where instead of trying to embed AI into each and every business unit and each every domain, and then having a lot of ongoing initiatives executed poorly, he suggested to have this kind of a sniper approach to implementation, where you pick one specific business domain and one specific pain point where AI can really move the needle quite significantly, and really focus and double down on it before trying to implement it across different domains. I think that was a very important learning.
Yeah, I think that is critical. And towards that, Carl recommended to focus on some KPIs, a single KPI approach, as you said, Sid, the sniper approach. And that's true for AI and data initiatives as well. And leaning on to that, Sid, I would say my final key takeaway is when we asked Carl about our signature question, the personification of data. And I was gladly surprised when he took a very emotional role of data as the wise father figure for him, who continuously guides you throughout your journey as you mature. And that's what we believe. Data plays a key role for organizations, both small and medium size and large one, as they are taking this transformative change of adopting AI in their business processes. So data is the true guiding, wise father figure. So that was very interesting and heartful for me to hear from Carl.
Yeah, totally. And I think it was very well said by Carl, and also a very good analogy, because it's all about how we use that wise father figure to learn ourselves and also imbibe a lot of those. Similarly, how we leverage the data and use it rather than purely trust on pure instincts is kind of a very important mix to have. So it was a very important takeaway. I agree. My final takeaway was, where we had that interesting conversation towards the end about not just the private sector, but also shifted gears into the public sector. And I was very impressed with the way Carl brought this whole thought about relocating and reallocation of the whole human value chain in this area. Of course, public sector is very important for us as a society and as a global force. And he mentioned this whole aspect about not just using AI in public sector to automate or improve business process, but kind of completely relook at how we can reallocate, as I said before, that human value. And he made some great examples. For example, having people then automate a lot of the day in day out public sector work, and then instead of focus on things like helping an elderly in need, or completely focus on revolutionizing research, such as looking at cancer, for instance. So that really, I think, was a very important part of not just using AI to help automate some aspects, worry about jobs, etc., but completely move the needle to look at completely new kind of value streams that could be created from this.
Yeah, I think that's very critical, Sid, right? There's a lot of focus on AI in the private sector, how companies are doing, but the public sector brings in a multiplier effect across multiple aspects of our lives, right? And impacts the private sector as well in turn. So the role of AI in reallocation of human capital was really eye-opener discussion for me. I had not thought in that dimension, but I think this is a good insights for the public sector individuals who are involved and how they could level up to this importance of AI within every aspect of public sector. So I think with that, I hope that our listeners and viewers really enjoyed our conversation. And thank you for joining us today. And we look forward to the next episode of our podcast. Till then, wish you a nice time, happy time, enjoy your life, and keep championing for data in whatever you are doing in the private sector and the public sector. So thanks for now, and look forward to seeing you again in the next episode. Bye for now.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.